Today, I want to reflect on the stories that I experienced back in 2021. I'm going to talk about my favorite ones, specifically my top 3, but I also want to list a few honorable mentions that were really good and that I did have fun with, but that just didn't quite make the cut to the top 3. I can only have 3, and I did experience a lot of stories last year, so some of the ones that I enjoyed just weren't quite good enough to make it up there. And I'm going to start with those honorable mentions, which are not listed in any particular order. The first one that I want to mention is the Red Rising series, specifically the second trilogy, because as some of you may know, I didn't really enjoy the first trilogy as much as I am enjoying the second one. Dark Age especially just blew me away. I had so much fun with it. Pierce Brown's writing has gotten so much better throughout each of these books, and Dark Age especially is just the pinnacle. He did a wonderful job in Dark Age. I enjoyed it from beginning to end. I could not believe that it was over, and I am not happy that I have to wait an indefinite amount of time for the next book. I know that in early 2021, he scrapped everything that he had written for the third book in the second trilogy or the sixth book overall, and he started over, so maybe he's somewhere close to being done with that sixth book / third book. It's confusing. It's the third book in the second trilogy, so it's the sixth book. Very confusing. But hopefully he's somewhere close to being done with it, and we get an announcement sometime this year for when that book will be released, because I'm very excited to continue the story and see how it ends. Pierce Brown's world and his characters have really grown on me a lot throughout each of these installments in the Red Rising series. Dark Age, one of my favorite books that I read last year for sure. And the next honorable mention is Spider-Man No Way Home. I had a lot of fun with this. It felt like my entire childhood just culminating in this one single cinematic experience. So many movies that I have watched since they came out, including the first Spider-Man movie with Willem Dafoe.
Funny thing about Willem Dafoe, his name kind of sounds like a frog talking to a parrot. Willem Dafoe! Willem Dafoe! No?
All of this kind of culminated all the way up to where we are now, and it was just a massive hit right in the heart. This movie definitely jerked a few tears from me. There were some really interesting moments in here. We got to see new sides of some of those villains from the previous movies, and ultimately I think they did a good job with everything except for the setup, and the setup is what is going to prevent this from being a movie that places in my top 3. If you look at the setup for this movie closely at all, it kind of starts falling apart and doesn't make a ton of sense. It really feels like an attempt to justify having this big epic cinematic experience, and it doesn't justify it very well. The fact that the spell goes wrong in a way that we don't really understand and that's never quite explained, and then all of a sudden it just starts bringing in these individuals from these other universes, and we're kind of just supposed to accept that. Yeah, the whole setup for it just didn't make a lot of sense, and it also kind of led to the conclusion of it not making a ton of sense to me. I've seen some people try to explain it away, but really I think that if you look at it through any sort of critical lens when it comes to the actual setup for the entire plot of this movie, it kind of falls apart, which means you really have to suspend your disbelief for the entirety of this film. Now, maybe the new Doctor Strange movie will kind of explain it a little bit more and help us understand in greater detail what exactly went wrong with the spell. I would like that, and that would definitely help bolster my enjoyment for No Way Home. But as it stands within No Way Home itself, it just didn't seem to be explained all that well, and I really had to suspend my disbelief in order to enjoy the movie. So while it definitely deserves an honorable mention and is a movie that meant a lot to me and that I will be watching again and that I had a ton of fun with, it didn't quite make it into my top 3 for last year's story. And then my third and final honorable mention from the stories that I experienced in 2021. And just to clarify, these are stories that I experienced in 2021, not that were released in 2021. That third honorable mention is going to be The Last of Us Part 2. I'm very vocal about the fact that The Last of Us was my favorite game since I played it until it was finally unseated by a different game that I played in 2021. I loved The Last of Us so much. I have played it more times than I can remember on every single difficulty. It is so much fun. I love the game itself, just the actual gameplay, and I also love the story. It is so emotional and so incredibly well written and well performed. And The Last of Us Part 2, in my opinion, is an excellent successor to that first game. Now, not quite as good as the first one in my opinion, but it is also telling a very different story from what we experienced in that first game. In the second one, we're following more of a revenge story, which, as you probably know, I really do enjoy revenge stories, and it is very well told and talks a lot about the consequences of vengeance and gives us multiple perspectives on these individuals who want vengeance and who have exacted vengeance vengeance and lets us see some of the psychological issues that are happening there. It also does an excellent job of using video games as a medium to tell a story just like The Last of Us did. I think that this is Naughty Dog's strongest suit, using video games to their full potential. They did a great job with this, forcing us to empathize with these characters and compelling us to really care about them, get inside their heads, and see what it is that makes them tick. So Last of Us Part 2, very well executed, and is a story that absolutely exemplifies why some stories are really just best told as games. All right, and now let us get into my top 3 stories that I experienced in 2021. But before I get to that, I just wanted to remind you that you can like and subscribe and comment, all for free, all of which definitely help me as I try to grow this channel. Okay, not gonna take any more of your time. Let's go on to the top 3, beginning with third place. In third place, I have The Burning by Evan Winter. This was actually the series that I used to reintroduce myself to reading fantasy, as I had been kind of in a slump for couple of years, and it was a great introductory back into reading fantasy. Evan Winter's story is incredible, and on top of that, it is an extremely well told revenge story. It is not just about gratification or wish fulfillment. It talks about the consequences of vengeance and how it can eat you up from the inside. There is so much to unpack in this story, and I have reviews out for both of the books, although they're kind of low quality in my opinion because I was still figuring out this whole thing, especially the first one, but you can check them out if you would like to. I loved these books. In fact, The Fires of Vengeance was one of 2 books last year that I gave 5 stars to. I really enjoyed this one, and I cannot wait for the 3rd book, which is supposed to be out sometime this year. I've even seen rumors that it's coming out in January, although I'm not totally certain on that one. And in second place, we have a film by my absolute favorite director. He directed my favorite movie of all time, which is Baby Driver, the movie Last Night in Soho. Last Night in Soho is very different from other movies that I've seen from Edgar Wright. This is a psychological thriller that leans really hard on the thriller elements. In some parts, it pretty much crosses over into horror, in my opinion, and it is excellent. It is so well done. The performances are wonderful. The mystery is just intense. There are a couple of things that I was able to guess, but then some things that I just did not see coming. He did a wonderful job with it. I was on the edge of my seat and nervous for a lot of it. Very confused, but that's kind of what you expect from an Edgar Wright movie. But then everything kind of comes together well in the end, and he ultimately just did a wonderful job with this film. If you are somebody who is into thrillers, I definitely recommend it. I know that I said that it leans kind of into horror, but I don't enjoy horror movies, and I enjoyed this one. So while there are some kind of horrifying aspects to it, it is done in a way that isn't like this gratuitous kind of boring sort of horror. So while there are some horror elements, it doesn't detract from the story, and in fact adds to it, and it really is just an excellent and powerful story. I loved Last Night in Soho. I watched it a couple of times and will probably be watching it again pretty soon, because now that I'm talking about it, I really want to see it one more time. But yes, if you have not seen Last Night in Soho, go watch it. Seriously, go watch it. You can leave. You don't have to keep watching this. I'm less important than Last Night in Soho. Go watch it now. But if you're not gonna go watch it now, you can keep watching me for the first place story. And that first place story is going to be, probably to no one's surprise, Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is a game that I finally had the chance to play last year, and I cannot believe that I'd put it off for so long. Everyone really undersold this game to me. The story is just wonderful and so powerful. Definitely pulled some tears from me. Super well done, and sort of a revenge story. And no, there's kind of a theme here, but it's just one of the things that I like. And it is so well told and well performed. And much like The Last of Us, it uses video games to their full potential. It has you empathize with the main character by having the main character perform these different actions and hearing what the main character is thinking and saying to himself. It is so well done and just a beautiful story. Not to mention a beautiful game visually. It is stunning. The graphics are absolutely gorgeous, and there are so many moments that I felt my heart drop into my stomach during some of them, especially the introductory title sequence. I'm not going to spoil that for you. You can look it up if you want it spoiled, but in my opinion, it's something that should be experienced in the moment, because when that world opens up to you, it is just magical. It was so wonderful. Well done. The swelling music. I cannot praise this game enough. If you have not played Ghost of Tsushima, you need to play it. And if you are somebody who will never ever play a video game, I suppose I could forgive you for just watching a playthrough, but you should experience this story in some way. The best way to experience is definitely to play it. There's even an easy mode that you can use if you just want to experience the story, but if you are adamant that you are never ever going to play a game, then yeah, maybe you should just watch someone play it, because this is a story that I think everybody needs to experience. And there you have it, my top 3 stories and a couple of honorable mentions that I experienced in 2021. I'm really excited for the stories I'm going to experience in 2022 and can't wait to reflect on them at the beginning of next year and pick out some of my favorites and the ones that I loved the most. Hopefully I'll even experience some things that I enjoyed more than the things that I've listed here. I'm always looking for the next best experience. I'm very hopeful that there will be some real winning stories experienced this year. I have a very extensive list of stories that I plan to experience, and if you're curious about the books that I'm going to be reading this year, you can click on this video up here. And until next time, bye.